Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. In today's video we'll cover user input and if and else statements, but you already probably knew that from the title of this video. Now let me run that really quick, and just so you can see what we'll be building just by using user input and if statements and also variables, but it's essential, right? Now if I click on the down arrow, I'm moving the button downwards, just like that. And if I click on the up arrow, I'm moving it upwards, just like that. So I'll be building this neat little function here. Now, this is actually not hard to make. So I have this script here, which I'm going to delete because we'll start from scratch. There we go. Let me indent that properly. Let me delete that. And I'm just going to keep the comments for now. I'm going to open Unity. I'm going to delete this whole canvas because you probably won't see it. Delete, there we go. Go ahead and go into Assets folder and click on Create and add a new folder here and just call it Scripts, just so your project is well organized and structured, of course. Now let's go to Scripts, create a new script here by clicking, actually no, don't create it just yet. Now we'll say create a new UI element, which will be canvas, should be our canvas. We'll move that here, and inside our canvas we'll add a new UI element, which is button. We'll be adding it inside our canvas. So now if you remember from the last video, the button is the child of that canvas. Now if you go to canvas and click on add component and basically click on new script, because you won't be seeing that here. I'm seeing it because I have this script already written, but you won't have it. So just click on new script, create the name, and just go and click on create and add. For now I'm just going to use this because I already have it, and then it will automatically add it to you here, for you here, and then just double click on your script so you open it. Now when you open your script, you'll be basically having you'll be basically having this void update and void start. Now you probably saw this from the last videos, but we didn't use them. However, now we'll be using the update function, and this comment here actually says what the update function is used for. And basically update, which is this function, is called once per frame, meaning every second, technically not second, but just imagine it's a second, just for the sake of understanding it. This function will be called, and whatever you have in this function will be called every second when you activate the game. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's just say debug.log I am running, just like that. Now if I run that script now, we can see here that it's updated, and we go to console. Okay, are you running? Okay, there we go. If you go to console, you see that I'm running is being printed constantly. Actually, way more than just a second, as you can see here. And that's because every frame, each second, or each millisecond this game is being run, then this will be executed, whatever is in this function. So what do we want to do? We want, if the user clicked on the up arrow, right, on the key on the keyboard, then move the button 5 units upwards. And coincidentally, if the user has clicked on the down arrow, then move the button 5 units downwards. So basically what we need here is somehow to get the input or the key that the user has clicked on the keyboard. And we're lucky because we have that already written. And if you see that line here, is basically the input is the class that has this function here, get key down, and we are passing which key we want, and this is from the key code, which is an enumerator, which we won't care for now. Again, we'll cover this later, but for now, if I say if, and then I say input dot get key down, and then I say key code, then up arrow, don't worry for the syntax in this here, in between these parentheses, because we'll cover this stuff in depth in the later videos. Just all you need to know from that is this here, which means the up arrow. And the syntax for if, I forgot the if. So the syntax of if is just, you say if, parentheses, and curly brackets. And within the parentheses is your condition. So in our case, what's our condition? Well, we basically want the user, if the user has clicked on the arrow, that's our condition. So has the user clicked on the arrow? If he has, then do whatever you want to do in between these brackets. So what do we want to do? Well, for now, let's just debug log a message, which will be up arrow has been clicked, just so we can see that it actually runs the way we want to. And we're also going to copy that, going to paste that, but instead of if, you type else if, meaning if this hasn't run, then jump on the next if. So the next if is else if. So if this hasn't run, and when will this not run? If that condition here has not been met, meaning if the user hasn't clicked on the up arrow. So if he hasn't, go on to the next else if. And if he has clicked on the down arrow, and you guessed it, that's the down arrow, then run that. If he hasn't, then just exit from that. And how do you have this default function, or not default, but default statement? Well, you just type else, and you say debug log nothing has been clicked. And let me run that now. And you see that we have this nothing has been clicked running constantly because we haven't clicked on this. And remember, this is happening each frame. So basically the compiler is, okay, has this been run? No. Has this been run? No, because we haven't clicked on neither keys. Then execute this. Then again, it's doing the same thing over and over again, each millisecond or whatever. So for now we want to remove that. But just so you know, the else block is executed if none of the if statements have been met. The conditions in these if statements has been met. So let's have this for now. Let's run that. Now we should see, if we click on the up arrow, we should see that message, up arrow has been clicked. If we click on the down arrow, oops, did we change the text? No, we haven't. So let's say down. Let's rerun that. Now we should see down arrow if we click on the down arrow. There we go. Down arrow, up arrow, down arrow, up arrow. And again, let me go through it again. Why? How does it know that it's up arrow? Because of this line here. And because it sees the key code of the up arrow. Here, it sees the key code of the down arrow. And since this has been met, then this will be run. But we don't want to print stuff to the console. It's boring. What we want to actually do is move the position of that button. So how do we make any changes to another object? Well, if you recall, I think it was the very first video we did, but we need to say serialize field, get the type of the object that we want to be changing, which is button in our case, and give it a name. In our case, we just give it a button. Now, if we save that and go to canvas, this should update. So now we are taking a button here of type button, because again, this whole script has been added as a component to the canvas. Then we serialized it, meaning now it's a field within that component, within that script, and it's in the canvas, right? So now it's taking a field of type button. Here you can see the type button. And what is of type button? You guessed it. That object over here is of type button. So we can drag this button object pass it into that field here. There we go. So now within our script here, we have access to this button object, to this very button object, and now we can manipulate it. And what we want to do again, we want to change the position. So now if I change the position here, you see that this position Y is changing, right? So if I go up, it's incrementing. If I go down, it's decrementing. And I mean, yeah, so basically we want to be changing this position Y. And how are we changing that? We'll basically say button dot transform dot position dot x, and then we basically give it a value like, let's say, plus 50, and this would increment plus 50, which would be 177, and it's going upwards. And how do we actually get to this result? Well, button, our object that we passed, we're accessing that. Then we're going to the transform component, which is that here, that transform, that's the component we're accessing. Then we're accessing the position field, which is that field here. And then, as you can see here, we have position X, position Y, position Z, and we're further specifying that we want the X position of it, which is that one. And we want to increment it by 50. However, there is a problem with that. And the problem is that just C# doesn't allow us to change values like this. And I won't go into detail here why we can't, because it's a little more advanced. You have to have an understanding of classes and all that good stuff. So for now we won't care about that. So the way that we will do this is we'll create a vector 3 class, and let's just call it a vector. We'll say new vector 3, and you see that this vector is it going to give me the parameters? Okay, so it's not going to give me show me the parameters, but it's taken an X and a Y value. So we want to be changing the Y value. So we won't be changing the X value. So this will be 0. However, we want to be changing the Y value, and let's say we want to change it by 20. However, we will say 20.0f, and the reason for that is because this here is a floating point. It's not a whole number. I don't know why it's showing it as a whole number here, but we could say 105, let's say, right? And let's say we could also have it as 109.9. There we go, it changed a little bit. So basically it's a floating point, technically. And then instead of saying button transfer position X, we could say is, actually I'm not going to use that syntax here, I'm going to say button transform position plus this vector. So now what we're saying is add this vector, and what is the vector? Well, it contains 20 for the Y value, which is the vertical value. We're adding this vertical value to the current position of that button. And now if we go to the down, actually let's control save that, run that, and if we press on the up arrow, there we go, we are changing the position of our button. And all you need to care for that for now is that all that this is saying is add 0 to the X and 20 to the Y, meaning this here will be incremented by 20 and the position of X will be staying 0 because this is X. Let me change it like this. This is X and this is Y. Hope that makes sense. Don't worry about the syntax for that now, but again, X, Y, we're adding 20 every time to the current position when we click on the up arrow. And if we copy that now, come here, we would almost do the same thing. However, we would change just one symbol. Actually, we wouldn't change it, we would add it, and that would be minus here. Why? Because when we click on the down arrow, we want to make that grow downwards, right? And watch the position Y value here. If we go downwards, we are decrementing the value here, right? So here we are increasing the value with minus 20, or in other words, we are decreasing it with 20. So that's when the down arrow has been clicked. So if I control save that and run that, let's see if that's actually working. Down arrow, there we go, it's working, and you can see the position here. It's 92, and then it's 112. Then it's 92 again when I click the up arrow, then it's 72, then it's 52, then it's 32 when I'm pressing the up arrow, then it's 12, then it's 8, then it's 28. You get the point. It's either minus 20 or plus 20, depending on what I have clicked. Now that we have seen this, I have a mini challenge for you. I want you to implement this. However, instead of going vertically, I want you to make it go as well as vertically, go horizontally. So meaning if you click on the left arrow, this should go to the left. If you click on the right arrow, it should go to the right. So pause the video now, try to implement it yourself, and then resume the video so you can see the problem solved. Now what we could do is just say else if input get key down key code left arrow. Again, we basically changed just the name of that key code. That's the most important part here. That differentiates all of the key buttons on the keyboard. Then we might as well just copy that. However, now we are not changing the Y position. However, we are changing the X position. And since it's going to the left, we can check it here. So if we go to the left, is it decrementing? Yes, it is. So here we'll say minus 20. And we don't need to have this F here, I think. I'm not completely sure, but we'll see. Because I think that in fact you can just have it as a whole number. At first I thought it has to be a floating point, but we'll see now. We'll go with the flow. Now let's copy that and do basically the same thing, but for the right arrow. And again, instead of decrementing, we'll be incrementing, because if you go to the right, you see the position X is incrementing. So we want to increment that by 20. Now, control save, and let's run that. Now, if I click on the left arrow, there we go, it's changing. If I click on the right arrow, there we go, it's changing. And if I click on the up and down, there we go, it's changing. So, you know, you can be creative and try to make a really tiny game just from knowing what you know so far. That would be great. Now, let's stop that. Now let's go through the flow again. Here we're serializing a field which is of type button, and it's in the canvas because this whole script is added as a component into that canvas here. And then since we serialize that, we can put a game object of that type. The types have to match, right? This is a button and this is a button, because when you go to canvas, right click, oh my god, delete. When you go to canvas, right click UI, and you see this is the type, so that's button, right? And then we have this update, which is updating every time. So every time, every single frame, you have a choice of these 4 if statements. And what are we saying? If the user has clicked on the up arrow, then add 20 to the vertical position. However, if this hasn't been the case, if this condition hasn't been met, then skip to the next one. And what is the next one? Well, has the user clicked on the down arrow? If he has, then decrement with by 20. Decrement the y position. And how is that the y position? Because the vector 3 takes x and y. So that's the y position. And then when we go to the left arrow here, if these haven't been clicked, then we go to the left arrow and we're decrementing by 20, because if we go here and we move the button to the left, we see we're decrementing the position x. Hence, we're writing a negative value here. And we're doing the same thing with right arrow. However, instead of decrementing, we're adding, because if we change it to the right, you can see the position x is changing as well, to the positive. And then we're adding this vector to the current position. So that's all we are doing. So hope you guys enjoyed that video, and hopefully you got this far. And if you got this far, try to just make a really tiny game, knowing this functionality. And yeah, I mean, that will be it for now. Comment down if you have watched it this far. I'll be glad to see that. And thank you guys for watching, and see you on the next video.